The melody drifted through the dusty air of Yankton, Dakota Territory, on that sweltering afternoon in July 1878. Wrapping around Isaac Holloway like a lasso, he had no desire to escape. He had ridden into town expecting nothing more than supplies and perhaps a cold drink, but the sound of that woman's voice stopped him mid-step outside the general store, his hand frozen on the hitching post where he had been about to secure his horse. She was humming something he did not recognize, a tune that seemed to dance between melancholy and hope. And when Isaac peered through the window, he saw her arranging bolts of fabric on the shelves, her movements graceful despite the mundane nature of the task. Her dark hair was pinned up in a practical style that still managed to look lovely, and when she turned slightly, he caught a glimpse of her profile. She was young, perhaps in her early 20s, with delicate features that somehow suggested strength rather than fragility. Isaac cleared his throat and pushed open the door, the bell above it announcing his entrance. The humming stopped immediately, and the woman turned to face him with a polite smile that reached her hazel eyes. "Good afternoon," she said, wiping her hands on her apron. "How may I help you today?" "I need some supplies," Isaac managed, suddenly feeling as tongue-tied as a schoolboy. He was 26 years old, had driven cattle from Texas to Kansas more times than he could count, had faced down rustlers and survived a stampede that killed 2 men, yet this slip of a woman made him forget how to string words together properly. Flour, coffee, beans, the usual provisions. Of course. She moved behind the counter with an efficiency that spoke of experience. How much of each? As Isaac listed his needs, he found himself studying her more closely. There was something about the set of her shoulders, the way she held herself, that suggested she had known hardship but had not been broken by it. Her hands, though small, showed the calluses of hard work, and when she reached up to pull down a sack of flour from a high shelf, he noticed the strength in her arms. "You are new to town," she said, not as a question but as a statement of fact. "I know most of the ranchers and cowboys who come through regularly. Been working the Dakota ranges for about 6 months now," Isaac replied, leaning against the counter in what he hoped was a casual manner. "Got hired on at the Hammond spread west of here. Name is Isaac Holloway." "Hannah Rhodes." She extended her hand across the counter, and when Isaac took it, he felt a spark of connection that had nothing to do with static electricity. Her grip was firm, confident. "I work here for Mr. Peterson. Have been for nearly 2 years now." "That song you were humming," Isaac said, reluctant to release her hand but knowing he must. "What was it?" A faint blush colored Hannah's cheeks, and she busied herself with measuring out his coffee beans. "Nothing in particular, just something my mother used to sing when I was small. I suppose I hum without thinking when I am working. My employer says it makes the store feel more welcoming." "It does," Isaac said, then added with more boldness than he felt, "more than welcoming. It is about the prettiest thing I have heard since leaving Missouri." Hannah's hand stilled for just a moment before she continued measuring. "That is kind of you to say, Mr. Holloway. Isaac, please." "Isaac, then." She wrapped the coffee in brown paper with practiced movements, "and you may call me Hannah if you like." They fell into an easy conversation as she gathered his supplies, and Isaac found himself lingering far longer than necessary, asking about the town, the territory, the quality of various goods on the shelves. Hannah answered each question with a mixture of humor and intelligence that captivated him. She had come to Dakota Territory with her family 3 years prior, she explained, seeking land and opportunity like so many others. Her father had died the first winter, pneumonia taking him swiftly, and her mother had followed 6 months later, unable to recover from the grief and the harsh conditions. "I am sorry," Isaac said, and meant it. That must have been terribly difficult. It was, Hannah acknowledged, her voice steady despite the sadness in her eyes. But I survived. Mr. Peterson gave me this position, and I have a room above the store. It is not the life I imagined when we left Ohio, but it is mine, and I am grateful for it. There was no self-pity in her words, only a straightforward acceptance of reality that Isaac admired deeply. He had known too many people who spent their days mourning what might have been instead of making the best of what was. "Would you permit me to call on you sometime?" The words were out before Isaac could second-guess himself. "Perhaps take you to dinner at the hotel, or for a walk when you are not working." Hannah looked at him directly, her gaze searching his face for something. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her, because she smiled. "I would like that. I finish work at 6 o'clock most evenings." "Tomorrow, then." Isaac felt his heart hammering against his ribs. "If you are free, tomorrow," Hannah agreed. Isaac paid for his supplies, loaded them onto his horse, and rode back to the Hammond ranch in a daze. The other cowboys noticed his distraction immediately, ribbing him good-naturedly about his dreamy expression. But Isaac took it all in stride. He had met hundreds of women in his travels, had even courted a few, but none had affected him the way Hannah Rhodes did. There was something about her, something beyond her pretty face and sweet voice, that called to a part of him he had not known existed. The next evening, Isaac arrived in Yankton a full hour early, having rushed through his work with uncharacteristic haste. He washed in the creek, put on his cleanest shirt, and even borrowed some bay rum from one of the other hands to make himself smell presentable. When he appeared outside the general store at precisely 6 o'clock, Hannah emerged wearing a simple blue dress that matched her eyes and made his breath catch in his throat. "You look beautiful," he said, offering his arm. "Thank you." She took his arm, and they began walking toward the hotel. "You look quite handsome yourself." The hotel dining room was modest but clean, and Isaac was grateful that his wages allowed him to afford a decent meal for them both. They talked for hours, the conversation flowing as naturally as a river finding its course. Hannah told him about her childhood in Ohio, her father's dreams of owning land, her mother's talent for growing flowers even in the harshest conditions. Isaac shared stories of his own upbringing in Missouri, his decision to head west after his parents' farm was foreclosed, his experiences on the cattle trails. "You miss it?" Hannah asked, cutting into her chicken. "Missouri?" Isaac considered the question carefully. "I miss certain things. The green hills, the way spring smelled there. But I do not miss feeling trapped, knowing that my whole life was mapped out before me with no chance of changing course. Out here, a man can make something of himself. Or a woman," Hannah added with a slight edge to her voice. "Or a woman," Isaac agreed immediately. "You have certainly proven that, running Mr. Peterson's store practically single-handed from what I observed." "He is getting older," Hannah explained. "His eyesight is failing and his hands shake. I manage most of the inventory now, handle the orders, deal with the suppliers. He pays me fairly, but sometimes I wonder what it would be like to have my own establishment, to build something that was truly mine." "What would you do, if you could do anything?" Hannah's face lit up with enthusiasm. "I would love to open a music hall. Not a saloon," she clarified quickly, "but a proper place where people could come to hear good music, where traveling performers might stop, where the people of Yankton could gather for entertainment that was not just drinking and gambling. When I was young, we went to concerts in Cleveland. There was an opera house there, and I remember thinking it was the most magical place in the world. The voices, the instruments, the way music could make you feel like you were somewhere else entirely." "That is why you hum while you work," Isaac said, understanding dawning. "You carry that music with you." "Yes," She looked at him with such gratitude that he knew he had truly comprehended something important to her. Most people think it is silly, a woman wanting to be involved with music professionally. But it is the one thing that makes me feel alive, truly alive. It is not silly at all, Isaac said firmly. A person needs something to feel passionate about, something beyond just surviving day to day. For me, it is horses. I am saving money to start my own horse ranch eventually, breeding and training quality stock. It is what gets me up in the morning, that dream. They discovered more common ground as the evening progressed. Both had lost parents too young. Both had been forced to become self-reliant. Both harbored dreams of building something meaningful in this raw territory. By the time Isaac walked Hannah back to the general store, he knew with absolute certainty that he wanted to see her again and again, as many times as she would allow. "Thank you for a lovely evening," Hannah said, pausing at the stairs that led to her room. "I cannot remember the last time I enjoyed myself so much. May I see you again, soon? I would be disappointed if you did not ask." Hannah's smile was radiant in the fading light. "I have Sunday afternoons free." "Sunday, then. I will bring a picnic lunch, and we can go down by the Missouri River." "That sounds perfect." Isaac tipped his hat and forced himself to walk away, though every instinct urged him to stay. He rode back to the ranch with his mind full of Hannah, replaying their conversation, remembering the way her eyes crinkled when she laughed, the musical quality of her voice even when she was just speaking. The next few weeks established a pattern that Isaac came to cherish. He saw Hannah every Sunday without fail, and he made excuses to ride into Yankton during the week as well, always needing something from the general store. They took walks along the river, shared meals, talked about everything and nothing. Isaac learned that Hannah loved reading, but had few books available to her. So he began bringing her volumes borrowed from the ranch foreman's surprisingly extensive library. Hannah learned that Isaac had a talent for drawing and convinced him to show her the sketches he made of horses and landscapes, praising them with genuine appreciation. One Sunday in late August, as they sat by the river watching the water flow past, Hannah began to hum again. The tune was different this time, livelier, and after a moment, she started singing actual words. Her voice was even more beautiful than Isaac had imagined, clear and strong with perfect pitch. The song was about a wandering soul finding home, and when she finished, Isaac found he had tears in his eyes. "Hannah," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "that was extraordinary, truly." She looked pleased but also slightly embarrassed. "I do not often sing for people. It feels too personal somehow. Will you sing for me again, whenever you feel comfortable doing so?" Isaac took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "Your music, it fills something inside me I did not even know was empty. When I hear you sing, the whole world seems better, brighter." "You make it sound so important," Hannah whispered. "Because it is important. You are important." Isaac shifted closer to her, his heart pounding. "Hannah, I know we have not known each other long, but I need you to understand something. From the moment I heard you humming in that store, my life changed. I had been just going through the motions, working towards some distant goal, but now everything has meaning. You have given me that. Your music, your laughter, your mind, your spirit. I want to hear you sing every day for the rest of my life. I want to help you build that music hall you dream about. I want to be the person you hum for while you work." Hannah's eyes widened, and for a terrifying moment, Isaac feared he had spoken too soon, revealed too much. But then she squeezed his hand and said, "I feel the same way. I have been trying not to hope too much, trying to protect my heart, but Isaac, you have broken through every defense I built. When you are near, I cannot help but sing. You make me want to share all the music inside me." Isaac leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished, but Hannah met him halfway. Their first kiss was sweet and tentative, a question and an answer all at once. When they finally drew apart, both were smiling. "I am going to marry you someday, Hannah Rhodes," Isaac said with absolute conviction. "If you will have me." "That sounds like a promise I want you to keep." Isaac Holloway. They spent the rest of the afternoon planning their future together, their dreams intertwining and growing stronger. Isaac would save money from his work at the Hammond Ranch, and Hannah would continue managing the general store while setting aside her own wages. In a year or two, they would have enough to purchase land, start Isaac's horse breeding operation, and eventually build Hannah's music hall. But life in Dakota Territory had a way of testing even the strongest plans. In September, a band of outlaws rode through the area, hitting several ranches and leaving destruction in their wake. The Hammond spread lost nearly 50 head of cattle and 2 of its horses, shot by the thieves for no apparent reason other than meanness. Isaac, who had been out checking fence lines when the raid occurred, returned to find his employer devastated and his fellow cowboys angry and spoiling for revenge. "We are riding out tomorrow," announced Jake Martinson, the ranch foreman. "We will track those bastards and get our cattle back." Isaac felt torn. His instinct was to join the pursuit, to seek justice for the wrong done to the people who employed him. But the thought of leaving Hannah, even temporarily, filled him with dread. What if something happened to him? What if the outlaws circled back and threatened Yankton? That evening he rode into town to explain the situation to Hannah. He found her closing up the store, and the moment she saw his face, she knew something was wrong. "What has happened?" Isaac explained about the raid and the planned pursuit. "I do not want to leave you, but I owe Hammond my loyalty. He gave me work when I needed it, treated me fairly. I cannot stand by while he suffers this loss." Hannah's face had gone pale, but her voice remained steady. "I understand. You must do what you feel is right, but Isaac, please be careful. I have lost everyone I love in this territory. I cannot lose you too." "You will not lose me," Isaac promised, pulling her into his arms. "I will come back to you. Nothing could keep me away. Then take this with you." Hannah pulled a small handkerchief from her pocket, one she had embroidered with wildflowers. "So you will have something to remind you of what waits here." Isaac tucked the handkerchief into his shirt pocket, right over his heart. "Sing for me once more before I go." Hannah did, right there on the boardwalk in front of the store, not caring who might hear. She sang a hymn about protection and safe return, her voice carrying down the empty street. When she finished, Isaac kissed her with a desperation that spoke of all his fears and hopes, then forced himself to mount his horse and ride away. The pursuit lasted 5 grueling days. The posse tracked the outlaws south into Nebraska, finally cornering them in a canyon. A brief, violent gunfight ensued, and when the smoke cleared, 3 outlaws were dead and 2 others captured. The Hammond cattle were recovered, along with stock stolen from 2 other ranches, but the victory came at a cost. 2 men from the posse were wounded, one seriously, and the whole experience left Isaac shaken. He had fired his gun at another human being for the first time in his life, not knowing if his shot had found its mark, not wanting to know. When Isaac finally returned to Yankton, dusty and exhausted and emotionally drained, Hannah was waiting outside the general store as if she had sensed his arrival. She ran to him, and Isaac barely managed to dismount before she was in his arms, holding him tightly while tears streamed down her face. "I was so frightened," she whispered against his chest. "Every day you were gone felt like a year. I am here now. I am safe." Isaac stroked her hair, feeling his own eyes burning with unshed tears. "And I realized something out there, Hannah. Life is too short and too uncertain to wait for the perfect moment. I do not want to spend years saving money before we start our life together. I want to marry you now as soon as possible." Hannah pulled back to look at him, her face streaked with tears but glowing with joy. "Yes. Yes, Isaac, I want that too." "We will not have much at first," Isaac warned. "I have a little money saved, enough to rent a house in town maybe, but not enough for land yet." "I do not care about that. We will build toward our dreams together, but we will do it as husband and wife." They were married 3 weeks later in the small church on the edge of Yankton. Hannah wore a dress she had sewn herself from fabric Mr. Peterson gave her as a wedding gift, and Isaac wore his best suit, purchased specially for the occasion. The ceremony was simple, attended by a handful of friends and well-wishers, but to Isaac and Hannah, it was perfect. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife and Isaac kissed his bride, he felt as though his entire life had been leading to this moment. They rented a small house on the outskirts of town, just 3 rooms but enough for their needs. Hannah continued working at the general store while Isaac kept his position at the Hammond Ranch. Their life fell into a comfortable rhythm. Isaac would rise before dawn to ride out to the ranch, work all day, then return in the evening to find Hannah preparing dinner, humming or singing while she cooked. Those evenings became sacred to him. After they ate, they would sit together on their small porch, watching the sun set over the prairie, making plans for the future. "I spoke with Mr. Peterson today," Hannah said one evening in October, about a month after their wedding. "He wants to retire next spring. He asked if we might be interested in purchasing the store." Isaac looked at her in surprise. "Purchase it? That would take considerable capital." "He is willing to work out terms, a portion up front and the rest paid over time from the store's profits." "It would mean giving up our plan for the horse ranch, at least for now, but Isaac, the store is a solid business. It makes steady money. And it is located right in the center of town, perfect for what I have been thinking about." "What have you been thinking about?" Hannah's eyes sparkled with excitement. "What if we expanded? The building has that large, unused space in the back. We could knock out a wall, create a small performance area. Nothing grand at first, just enough for traveling musicians to put on shows, for me to give singing lessons to people in town. We could hold dances, concerts. It would be the start of my music hall combined with a general store. 2 businesses in one." Isaac considered the idea carefully. It was not what he had envisioned, but he could see the merit in it. The store was established, unlike a horse ranch which would be starting from nothing. And Hannah's eyes held such hope, such passion, that he found himself wanting to give her this dream. "What kind of down payment is he asking?" $500. Isaac did quick calculations in his head. He had $200 saved. If Hannah had been setting aside money as well, they might be close. "How much do you have saved?" $325. "Then we have enough." Isaac took her hands in his. "If this is what you want, truly want, then we will do it." Hannah threw her arms around his neck. "Are you certain? I know you dream of breeding horses." "I dream of many things, but most of all I dream of making you happy. We can still raise horses someday. Perhaps we can keep a few on some land outside of town once we are more established. But for now, this seems like the right path." They purchased the general store from Mr. Peterson that November, signing papers that made them business owners and debt holders all at once. The responsibility was daunting, but they threw themselves into the work with enthusiasm. Isaac took over the heavy labor of the store, unloading shipments, repairing shelves, and managing the larger transactions, while still working part-time at the Hammond Ranch to ensure they had steady income. Hannah managed the day-to-day operations, ordering inventory, serving customers, and keeping the books. In their spare time, they began renovating the back room. Isaac knocked down the dividing wall, creating a space large enough to hold perhaps 50 people. He built a small raised platform that could serve as a stage, and Hannah sewed curtains to create a backstage area. They could not afford much decoration, but Hannah had a good eye, and she made the space feel welcoming with simple touches. Wildflowers in jars, candles for lighting, benches and chairs borrowed and begged from various sources. Their first performance took place on a Friday evening in December. Hannah had put up notices around town advertising a concert of Christmas music, admission 10 cents per person. She had been practicing for weeks, and Isaac had never seen her so nervous. What if no one comes? She fretted, pacing backstage while Isaac tuned the old piano they had acquired from the church. "They will come," Isaac assured her. "Everyone in Yankton has heard you sing at church. They know how talented you are. Church singing is different. This is asking people to pay money specifically to hear me perform. And they will happily pay because you are worth every penny and more." By 7 o'clock, when the concert was scheduled to begin, the space was full, with people standing along the back wall. Isaac felt a surge of pride as he looked out at the audience, then turned to Hannah. "Ready?" She took a deep breath, smoothed her dress, and nodded. "Ready." When Hannah stepped onto the small stage and began to sing "Silent Night," her voice pure and clear, a hush fell over the room. She sang for an hour, performing traditional carols and a few popular songs of the day, and by the time she finished with "Amazing Grace," there were tears on many faces in the audience. The applause was thunderous, and several people immediately asked when the next concert would be held. "You were magnificent," Isaac told her later after everyone had left and they were straightening up the space. "Absolutely magnificent." "They loved it," Hannah said, still looking slightly dazed. "They truly loved it. Of course they did. I told you they would." Hannah counted the admission fees they had collected. 47 people came. That is $4.70. "Isaac, if we can do this even once a month, it will help with our expenses tremendously." "Then we will do it once a month," Isaac said. "And we will advertise it in the surrounding towns too. Bring in people from outside Yankton." Over the next year, their combined business flourished. The general store remained profitable, providing their basic income, while Hannah's concerts became increasingly popular. She began offering singing lessons as well, teaching young women and even a few men who wanted to improve their voices. Traveling performers heard about the venue and began stopping in Yankton to put on shows, with Hannah and Isaac taking a percentage of the admission fees. By the summer of 1880, they had paid off a significant portion of their debt to Mr. Peterson and had even managed to save some additional money. More importantly, they had built something together, a business and a life that reflected both their strengths and their dreams. Isaac discovered that he enjoyed the work of running the store and the performance hall more than he had expected. He liked interacting with customers, negotiating with suppliers, solving the daily problems that arose. And he loved watching Hannah bloom in her element, sharing her music with an appreciative audience, teaching others to find their voices. Their personal life was equally fulfilling. Hannah proved to be a devoted wife, and their small house was filled with laughter and love. She sang while she cooked, while she cleaned, while she worked in the tiny garden she had planted behind their house. Isaac kept his promise to himself, ensuring that every day of their married life was filled with her music. In August, Hannah discovered she was pregnant. The news filled them both with joy and a fair amount of trepidation. They were still young, still building their business, and the responsibility of a child seemed enormous. But as the months passed and Hannah's belly grew, their excitement overwhelmed their fears. "What should we name the baby?" Hannah asked one evening as they sat together, Isaac's hand resting on her swollen stomach. If it is a girl, I was thinking maybe Grace after my grandmother. She was a strong woman, kind and wise. Grace is beautiful, and if it is a boy, I was hoping you might choose. Hannah considered for a moment. James, after my father, he never got to see what we have built here, but I would like to honor his memory. James or Grace Holloway, Isaac said, smiling. Both sound perfect. Their son was born on a cold March morning in 1881, healthy and loud, with a full head of dark hair like his mother. They named him James, and Isaac held his son for the first time with trembling hands, overwhelmed by the rush of love and protective instinct that surged through him. "He is perfect," Isaac whispered, staring down at the tiny face. "Absolutely perfect. He has your eyes," Hannah said weakly from the bed, exhausted from the ordeal but smiling. "Blue-gray like storm clouds." The addition of James to their household changed everything and nothing. They were busier, more tired, but also happier than ever. Hannah took a few months away from regular performances, focusing on the baby and managing the store from home, but by summer she was ready to return to the stage, her voice somehow even richer after giving birth. Isaac discovered he had a natural affinity for fatherhood. He loved every aspect of it, from the mundane tasks of changing diapers to the profound moments of watching his son discover the world. James was an easy baby, quick to smile, and as he grew, it became clear he had inherited his mother's musical gifts. He would quiet instantly when Hannah sang, his little face rapt with attention. By the time James was 2 years old, the general store and performance hall were thriving beyond Isaac and Hannah's initial dreams. They had expanded the store's inventory, started carrying more specialized goods, and had become the primary supplier for ranches and farms throughout the region. The performance hall had gained a reputation as the best venue between Sioux City and Yankton, attracting quality performers and large audiences. In the spring of 1883, they received an offer that would test everything they had built. A businessman from Omaha visited Yankton and attended one of Hannah's concerts. Impressed by both her talent and the venue, he approached Isaac and Hannah with a proposition. "I am opening a proper opera house in Omaha," he explained, sitting in their living room while James played quietly on the floor. "A large venue, seating for 300, with the finest acoustics money can buy. I need a headlining performer to attract audiences when we open in the fall. Mrs. Holloway, I would like that person to be you." Hannah looked stunned. "You want me to perform in Omaha? More than that. I want you to be our resident performer. You would sing regularly once or twice a week for a salary of $100 per month plus a percentage of ticket sales. It is an opportunity to reach a much larger audience, to establish yourself as a serious vocalist." "That is very generous," Isaac said carefully, "but we have a business here, a life, our home. I understand, and I am not suggesting you abandon anything. Omaha is only about 100 miles from here. Mrs. Holloway could travel there for performances, perhaps staying a few days at a time. Many performers maintain families in one location while working in another." After the businessman left, Isaac and Hannah sat in silence for a long while, both processing the offer. "What do you think?" Hannah finally asked. "I think it is an incredible opportunity for you," Isaac said honestly. "The kind of chance most singers never get. But I also think it would be difficult. You would be away from home often, away from James and from me, and I would worry about you traveling alone." "I would not be alone. I could hire a companion, or perhaps you could come with me sometimes. And leave the store, leave James." Hannah sighed. "I know. It is complicated. Part of me wants to say yes immediately, to grasp this opportunity with both hands, but the larger part of me does not want to risk what we have here. Our family, our business, our life together. Is it worth it?" Isaac pulled her close, thinking carefully about his response. "Only you can answer that, Hannah. I will support whatever you decide. If you want to take this offer, we will find a way to make it work. If you want to turn it down and continue as we are, I will never resent you for it. Your music is important, but so is your happiness, your peace of mind." "I need to think about it," Hannah said. She took 3 days to make her decision, weighing the pros and cons, praying for guidance. In the end, she turned down the offer, but she did so with a counter-proposal. She would travel to Omaha 4 times a year, once each season, to perform a special concert. This would give her the opportunity to reach a wider audience without requiring her to be away from her family for extended periods. The businessman accepted her terms, and so began a new chapter in their lives. Hannah's quarterly trips to Omaha were successful beyond anyone's expectations. Her performances sold out consistently, and she began to develop a following in the city. More importantly, she was able to return home between concerts and continue her work in Yankton, maintaining the life she and Isaac had built together. The years passed in a blur of activity and joy. The store continued to prosper. The performance hall hosted increasingly renowned acts, and James grew into a bright, musical child who loved nothing more than listening to his mother sing. Isaac and Hannah added to their family as well, welcoming a daughter in 1884, whom they named Grace as planned, and another son in 1886, whom they named Daniel after one of Hannah's uncles who had been kind to her as a child. By 1887, Isaac and Hannah owned the building that housed their store and performance hall outright, having made the final payment to Mr. Peterson's estate after his death the previous year. They had also purchased a larger house, one with enough room for their growing family and a proper yard where the children could play. Additionally, Isaac had fulfilled his original dream of raising horses, buying a small piece of land outside town where he kept a breeding mare and a stallion, producing quality stock that sold well to local ranchers. One evening in late summer, with the children in bed and the house quiet, Isaac and Hannah sat on their porch as they had so many times before, watching the sun set over the prairie. "You remember the day we met?" Hannah asked, leaning against Isaac's shoulder. "Every detail," Isaac replied. "The way you were arranging fabric on those shelves, the sound of your humming floating out into the street. I thought I had stumbled into some kind of dream. I remember looking up and seeing you in the doorway, covered in dust from the trail, with the strangest expression on your face. Like you had been struck by lightning. I had been, in a way." Isaac kissed the top of her head. "You changed everything for me that day, Hannah. Before I met you, I was just existing, working toward vague goals that did not really matter. You gave me purpose, direction. You filled my life with song just like I asked you to. You asked me to do that." Hannah sat up to look at him. "I do not remember that conversation. Not in words, maybe, but every time I came into that store, every time I found an excuse to talk to you, I was asking, begging, really. Please, let me be part of your music. Let me be the one you sing for." Hannah's eyes glistened with tears. "You have given me so much more than I ever dreamed possible, Isaac. This life, our children, the opportunity to share my music with others. But most of all, you have given me a partner who sees me, truly sees me, and loves what he sees. Do you know how rare that is?" "I am the lucky one," Isaac insisted. "I found you humming while you worked, and I was smart enough not to walk away. Best decision I ever made." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the sounds of the summer evening, crickets chirping, a distant coyote call, the rustle of wind through the grass. "I am pregnant again," Hannah said softly. Isaac turned to her in surprise and delight. Truly, when did you find out? I have suspected for a few weeks, but I wanted to be certain before I told you. This will be our fourth child, Isaac. 4 beautiful children, a thriving business, a home we own. Sometimes I can hardly believe this is my life. Believe it, Isaac said, pulling her close. This is real, all of it. We built it together, piece by piece, day by day, and it is only going to get better. Their fourth child, a daughter they named Sarah, was born in the spring of 1888. She proved to be the calmest of their children, content to observe the world around her with serious dark eyes. James, now 7, was already showing signs of following in his mother's musical footsteps, picking out simple melodies on the piano and singing with a clear, true voice. Grace, at 4, was a whirlwind of energy and curiosity, constantly exploring and asking questions. Daniel, just 2, adored his big brother and followed James everywhere. Life was full and busy and sometimes overwhelming, but Isaac and Hannah navigated it together, always making time for each other despite the demands of children and business. Hannah sang at their dinner table at bedtime while doing chores, and Isaac never tired of hearing her voice. It was the soundtrack of his life, as essential as breathing. In 1890, Yankton was chosen as the capital of the newly formed state of South Dakota, bringing an influx of people and commerce to the town. Isaac and Hannah's business benefited enormously from this growth. The general store expanded again, taking over the building next door, and the performance hall was renovated to seat 100 people comfortably. Hannah curtailed her trips to Omaha as the local demand for her performances increased. Why travel when she had appreciative audiences right in her hometown? Isaac began teaching James about business, taking the boy with him to meet with suppliers, explaining how to negotiate, how to assess quality, how to treat both customers and employees with fairness and respect. James absorbed it all eagerly, already showing the intelligence and work ethic that would serve him well in life. On their 10th wedding anniversary in 1889, Isaac surprised Hannah with a gift he had been planning for months. He led her out to the performance hall after hours, where he had arranged candles around the space and placed a single chair in the center of the stage. "What is this?" Hannah asked, looking around in confusion. "Sit," Isaac instructed, gesturing to the chair. When Hannah sat, Isaac walked onto the stage. To her utter shock, he began to sing. His voice was not trained like hers, rougher and less polished, but it was strong and sincere. He sang a song he had written himself, about a cowboy who found his heart's desire in a woman humming while she worked, about building a life together note by note, about love that grew stronger with each passing year. By the time he finished, Hannah was crying openly, and Isaac was grinning despite his nervousness. "I am not a singer," he said, sitting beside her and taking her hands. "But you have inspired me to try, to be brave enough to share something personal and frightening, because you do that every time you perform. I wanted you to know that I see your courage, your talent, your gift, and I wanted to give you a gift in return, something from my heart." "That was the most beautiful thing anyone has ever done for me," Hannah whispered. "Isaac, I love you so much. I love you too, more than I have words to express, but perhaps I can try with song now." They laughed together, and Hannah kissed him with the passion of a new bride rather than a woman married for a decade. Their love had not dimmed with time or familiarity. Instead, it had deepened, matured, become something solid and unshakable. The 1890s brought both challenges and triumphs. A drought in 1893 affected many of the ranchers and farmers who were their customers, causing a temporary downturn in business. But Isaac and Hannah extended credit to those in need, trusting that when times improved, their neighbors would remember their kindness. Their faith was rewarded when the rains returned, and their customers paid their debts. Often with interest they insisted on adding despite Isaac's protests. James graduated from the local school in 1895 at age 14 and began working full-time in the family business. He had his father's head for numbers and his mother's creativity, coming up with innovative ways to market their goods and attract performers to the hall. Grace followed her brother's musical inclinations, beginning formal training with her mother and showing remarkable promise as a vocalist. Daniel discovered a love of horses that matched Isaac's, spending hours at the small ranch helping care for the animals and learning about breeding. Sarah, quietest of the children, surprised everyone by revealing a talent for drawing and painting, creating beautiful images of the prairie landscape. In 1897, a representative from a major retail company in Chicago approached Isaac about buying their general store, offering an astounding sum of money. Isaac was tempted by the financial security the sale would provide, but he ultimately declined. The store was more than just a business. It was part of their family legacy, something he wanted to pass on to his children. "I do not want to sell what we have built," he explained to Hannah after declining the offer. "Someday James might run the store while Grace manages the performance hall. Our grandchildren might work here. This is not just about money, it is about creating something that lasts." "I am glad," Hannah said. "I would have supported your decision either way, but I am glad you want to keep it. This place holds so many memories for us." As the new century approached, Isaac and Hannah reflected on how far they had come. They were now in their 40s, with adult children and a business empire that employed a dozen people. The general store had become the largest in the region, and Hannah's performance hall, now officially named Rhodes Hall in her honor, hosted concerts and theatrical performances that drew audiences from across South Dakota and neighboring states. James married in 1899, wedding a local girl named Catherine Morris, and Isaac and Hannah became grandparents the following year when their first grandchild, a boy named Isaac Jr., was born. Holding his grandson for the first time, Isaac felt the same rush of love and wonder he had experienced with his own children, mixed with a profound sense of satisfaction. He had built a legacy, not just of business success, but of family and love. Hannah continued to perform regularly, her voice somehow growing more powerful and expressive with age. She had become something of a legend in South Dakota, the woman who had turned a small-town general store into a cultural center, who had brought music and art to the frontier. Young singers came from across the territory seeking her instruction, and she taught generously, always remembering what it felt like to have a dream and no clear path to achieve it. In the spring of 1901, Isaac and Hannah celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary with a large party at Rhodes Hall. Their children had organized the event, inviting friends and business associates from across the region. The evening featured performances by several of Hannah's former students, a dance, and finally, a duet by Isaac and Hannah themselves, singing the song Isaac had written for their 10th anniversary. As they sang together, their voices blending, Isaac looked at his wife and marveled at the journey they had taken. From that first moment in the general store, when her humming had captured his heart, to this night, surrounded by the family and community they had built together, every step had been worth it. After the party, in the quiet of their bedroom, Hannah hummed softly while brushing her hair, the same unconscious habit she had maintained for decades. "You are still humming while you work," Isaac observed, smiling at her reflection in the mirror. "And you are still listening," Hannah replied, meeting his eyes. "Some things never change." "Thank God for that," Isaac said fervently. He crossed the room and took the brush from her hand, setting it aside, then pulled her into his arms. They danced slowly to music only they could hear, moving to the rhythm of a love that had sustained them through 2 decades of marriage and would sustain them for decades more. As the years continued to pass, Isaac and Hannah settled into the comfortable rhythms of middle age. They gradually handed over more responsibility for the store to James, who proved to be an excellent manager, while Grace took over most of the performances at Rhodes Hall, her voice rivaling her mother's in beauty, if not quite matching it in depth of experience. Daniel opened his own horse ranch, using breeding stock from Isaac's small operation, and Sarah married a newspaperman and moved to Pierre, where she illustrated for the local paper. Isaac and Hannah spent more time with their grandchildren, of whom there were eventually 7, teaching them the same values they had instilled in their own children: hard work, integrity, kindness, and the importance of following one's dreams while remaining grounded in family and community. In 1908, on a warm summer evening much like the one when they had first courted, Isaac and Hannah sat on their porch watching the sunset. They were both in their mid-50s now, their hair touched with gray, their faces lined with the marks of a life well lived. But when Hannah began to hum, then sing, her voice was as beautiful as ever, and when Isaac looked at her, he still saw the young woman who had captured his heart 28 years earlier. "You remember what you told me once?" Isaac asked. "That first dinner we had together. You said you wanted to open a music hall to bring culture to Yankton." "I remember," Hannah said. "It seemed like such an impossible dream at the time. You did it, though. You made it real. Rhodes Hall is known throughout the region. You have taught dozens of students, given hundreds of performances. You have filled this whole town with song, not just my life." "We did it together," Hannah corrected. "I could never have achieved any of it without you, Isaac. You believed in me when I barely believed in myself. You worked beside me every step of the way. You are as much a part of Rhodes Hall's success as I am." "I just listened," Isaac said modestly. "You did all the hard work. Listening is work, the most important work sometimes. You have spent our entire marriage truly hearing me, not just my voice but my hopes, my fears, my dreams. That is the greatest gift you could have given me." Isaac took her hand, feeling the calluses that had never quite disappeared despite their improved circumstances. "When I found you humming while you worked, I asked if you would fill my life with song. You have done that every single day, but you have also filled it with laughter and love and meaning. I am the luckiest man who ever lived, and I am the luckiest woman." Hannah leaned her head on his shoulder, and they sat in peaceful silence as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. Their story was not one of grand adventure or dramatic heroics. It was simply the story of 2 people who found each other at the right moment, who worked together to build something meaningful, who loved each other through good times and difficult ones, who raised a family and created a legacy that would outlast them both. It was, in its own way, the most extraordinary story of all. As darkness fell and the stars began to appear, Hannah began to hum again, a new melody Isaac had not heard before. "What is that song?" he asked. "I am not sure yet," Hannah admitted. "It is still forming. But I think it is about endings and beginnings, about the journey we have taken and the journey still ahead." "Will you sing it for me when you have the words?" "Always," Hannah promised. "I will always sing for you, Isaac, until my last breath." And she did, filling the remainder of their days together with music and love, the cowboy and his songbird, forever entwined in a harmony that death itself could not silence. Their children and grandchildren would carry their story forward, would remember the love that had built an empire from a simple general store. would pass down the tale of how a cowboy heard a woman humming while she worked and knew he had found his home. As they entered their 60s and then their 70s, Isaac and Hannah slowed down but never stopped. They took walks each evening, weather permitting, and Hannah always hummed or sang during their strolls. Isaac's hearing began to fade in his later years, but he could still make out the melody of her voice, and that was all that mattered. Their 50th wedding anniversary in 1929 was a grand celebration, organized by their children and grandchildren. Rhodes Hall was packed with family, friends, and people whose lives had been touched by Isaac and Hannah's generosity and kindness over the decades. The governor of South Dakota attended and gave a speech honoring their contributions to the state's cultural life. But the highlight of the evening was when Hannah, now 71 but still beautiful in Isaac's eyes, took the stage one last time and sang "Amazing Grace," the same song that had closed her very first public performance in that same hall 47 years earlier. There was not a dry eye in the house, and when she finished, Isaac stood and made his way slowly to the stage, his joints stiff with age but his spirit strong. He took his wife's hand, and with his voice wavering but sincere, sang the first few lines of the song he had written for their 10th anniversary, about finding love in an unexpected place and building a life together one note at a time. The audience erupted in applause, and their children rushed the stage, enveloping Isaac and Hannah in a group embrace that perfectly captured the warmth and love that had always defined their family. Isaac passed away peacefully in his sleep in the winter of 1931, at the age of 79. He had spent his last day much as he had spent thousands of days before, working in the store for a few hours in the morning, having lunch with Hannah, taking a short walk, then sitting on the porch while she hummed and sang. He went to bed that night telling Hannah he loved her, and when she woke the next morning, he was gone, a slight smile on his face as if he had departed while dreaming of something pleasant. Hannah was devastated by the loss, but she found comfort in her children, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren, and in the memories of more than 50 years of happiness. She continued to live in their house, tended by family, and she hummed every day while she worked at whatever small tasks she could still manage. The general store and Rhodes Hall passed to James, who ran them with the same integrity his father had modeled. Grace continued to teach and perform, becoming a beloved figure in her own right. Daniel's horse ranch became one of the most respected breeding operations in the state, and Sarah's illustrations had been collected in several books documenting life in early South Dakota. Hannah lived another 7 years, and she spent them sharing stories of Isaac with anyone who would listen. She told about the day they met, about his proposal by the river, about how he had supported her dreams and built his own alongside hers. She spoke of his kindness, his strength, his humor, his unwavering love. When Hannah passed away in the spring of 1938 at the age of 80, she went peacefully, surrounded by family, humming one final melody that faded into silence. She was buried beside Isaac in the Yankton cemetery, under a large oak tree, and the headstone bore a simple inscription chosen by their children. She filled his life with song. He gave her music wings. The legacy of Isaac and Hannah Holloway lived on long after their deaths. The general store continued to operate for another 50 years, eventually becoming a historical landmark. Rhodes Hall was preserved as a performing arts center and still hosts concerts and theatrical productions to this day. Their descendants spread across South Dakota and beyond, carrying forward the values and love that Isaac and Hannah had instilled in them. The story of the cowboy who found a woman humming while she worked and asked her to fill his life with song became part of Yankton's history, told and retold, a reminder that the greatest adventures are not always those of violence and conquest, but sometimes those of love and partnership, of dreams built together, of music shared across a lifetime. Isaac and Hannah's tale was one of ordinary people who created something extraordinary through dedication, love, and the simple but profound act of truly seeing and hearing each other. In a time and place known for its roughness and hardship, they had carved out a space for beauty and culture, proving that even on the frontier, there was room for song, for art, for tenderness. Their great-great-grandchildren still visit Yankton, still tour the old general store building and Rhodes Hall, still hear the stories of how it all began with a tune hummed in a dusty general store and a cowboy who was smart enough to stop and listen. Some of them have inherited the musical gifts that ran through the family line, while others have inherited the business acumen or the love of horses or the artistic talent. But all of them carry forward the most important inheritance of all, the knowledge that love, when nurtured and respected, when built on mutual support and genuine partnership, can create something that outlasts any individual life. In the end, that was the true song Hannah filled Isaac's life with, not just the melodies she sang but the harmony they created together. A love song that echoed through generations and would continue echoing as long as anyone remembered their story. It was a reminder that the best love stories are not the flashiest or the most dramatic, but the ones where two people simply choose each other, day after day, year after year, building a life together with patience and dedication, and the kind of deep, abiding affection that transforms ordinary moments into something sacred. The prairie wind still blows through Yankton, and on quiet evenings, some people swear they can hear the faint strains of a woman's voice humming an old melody, a cowboy's gentle laughter in response, and the sound of two souls forever entwined in the music they made together. It is a beautiful fiction, of course, but like all the best fictions, it contains a deeper truth, that love, real love, never truly dies. It lives on in the children raised, the businesses built, the lives touched, the example set. Isaac and Hannah's love story, which began with a simple tune and a cowboy brave enough to ask for more, became part of the very fabric of their town, woven into its history, its identity, its soul. And so their story continues, not as something finished and filed away, but as something alive and ongoing, inspiring new generations to listen for the music in ordinary moments, to be brave enough to build dreams with the people they love, to create legacies not of wealth or fame but of kindness, integrity, and love that endures. That was what Isaac and Hannah gave to the world, and it remains their greatest gift, more valuable than any store or performance hall, more lasting than any building or business. They gave proof that two people, armed with nothing but love and determination, can build something beautiful that outlasts them both, filling not just one life with song but countless lives, for generations to come.